Now I'm going to talk about arranging classical music for the Chapman Stick. In my first example, Moonlight Sonata, I start out just like the sheet music. Now notice my little finger on the left hand is 2 octaves higher. Now it's back to the normal part. Now I get to the next section, and normally the note would be up here, like. But to reach that, you'd actually have to stretch the chord like this. So what I do is I play that high note in the left hand. Yes, it's an octave lower, but just like a guitar player would rearrange sometimes classical piano pieces, the same thing is true on the Chapman Stick, although I can play more parts because of the 2 hands. So it would sound like this. Allows me to keep the chords sustaining, just like holding the pedal down on a piano. And so forth and so on. So that's one trick, is you can arrange the notes or the melody note that was played in the right hand and move it over to the left. And in this case, I moved it down an octave. To play it up an octave, it would be very difficult again because you'd have to reach too far for some of the high notes. So that was my approach to Moonlight Sonata. Okay, now we'll try Ave Maria, and this I'll show you how I layer parts. First of all, here's the F chord where it begins. Now the traditional part begins with the left F like this, and the right hand like this. So here's your part. Okay, what I do is I actually will play this part again an octave lower in the chord. And you might ask, why would I move that down an octave? Well, that allows me to play the melody note an octave higher, like this. There. Also notice that in the left hand I actually added low bass notes that in some of the arrangements are not printed, they're not there, but I added them in to fill out the sound like this. Right there, there's your low note. And then I come across back to the chord. So now I'll play the whole chord. So I actually have the melody there, the chord there, the extension of the chord down here, and the low note down there. So that is how I arranged Ave Maria. And then going into the next section, same thing. Sometimes I add a little different embellishment. That's my own version of some improvisation. And so forth and so on. So that gives me a really good foundation or basis to play that song. Now I'll talk about sustaining notes in the melody hand using Für Elise as an example. The melody goes like this. What I don't like about that is that I'm playing that in a scale pattern shape. What I like to do is sustain the notes by playing more of a chordal approach, like this. So all three of these notes are sounded at the same time instead of this way, like that. So now I add the left-hand chord. There's your A minor. Notice there that this note, that note, that note, and that note, all four of these are sustaining at one time instead of like that going up. So now I'll play both of those parts. Same thing there, all three of these, and then I do play that note on top of this one. But there's still enough sustain with these two to hear all three of those notes ring out. So now I put the whole part together. Then here I'll hit the low note, and then I'll sustain these notes after I hit the low note. So again, like that, and then this note is held down. So the trick is to develop your scale patterns in such a way that you get more overlap. It would be an analogy to playing the piano and holding down the pedal to sustain those notes. Same thing in the first part too. Like that, I try to get a little overlap of those notes. So that's how I do that for that song.